Yeah, why make an intro where video games just already made an intro, right? Let me see here. Does this do? I think I would have this ready to go. There we go. Hey everyone, welcome. My name is Rodrigo. As always, I am joined by my sidekick, Smokey the Smoke Detector. And this is twitch.tv/El Pikachon. Or if you're watching later on YouTube, this is Lopez Family Variety Channel. Um, Today, I'm gonna talk a little bit about Fire Emblem and talk about my what I did. I've actually played all the way through the game twice now. Um, and if you remember my last stream, I like started that game and I'm like, I'm gonna do this run, and it's like, I don't think that people come to my stream to watch like the gameplay. They come to watch me talk and to chat basically. So I wasn't expecting to do a lot of that, but so I was like, okay, well, I'll save this for the stream, and then I was like, but I want to keep playing this game. So over the last 2 weeks, I just finished the whole game again. Pretty much playing in like 2 or 3 hour bursts whenever I had time. Um, so I've really been enjoying it, and I kind of wanted to talk a little bit about what all is happening. Hey Harv, how's it going? Yeah, Smokey has even on days when the stream is canceled, Smokey still shows up. So he's like the number one guy pretty much. Let's see. So as you can tell, I don't have like the giant headphones on today. So if my audio sounds weird, or if it's too low or whatever, or the music's too high, let me know. Okay, so let's talk about my first playthrough. So like I said,
Come for Rodrigo, stay for Smokey.
that's right. Thank you for that subscription, Horsepaw and Mine. Really appreciate it. Um, Smokey's pretty much where it's at. So we're all riding Smokey's coattails here. Okay. Do do do. This game is one of the cute things is that you can see your party in the loading screen, like little pixel versions of them, like running. It's pretty cute. Okay. Let's talk about uh, the group that I had in my first playthrough. So I went in pretty much blind. I wasn't worrying too much about um, whether a unit was necessarily like good. I kind of just went with units that I liked the way they looked, or I liked something about them, or maybe in the like their first foray seemed strong. Um, so let's go unit by unit. So obviously you have your main unit, Alir, who I nicknamed Roxu in this, just because it seemed like a cool name. Um, as you can, if you've played Fire Emblem, you can see that she's not using her like Divine Dragon class. So I reclass her into Hero, not because Hero is necessarily better, but because I made a serious reading mistake when I first started playing this game. There's a like Emblem Lucina gives you this ability that allows you to basically gang up on enemies. Like if you make an attack, your other units can also make an attack. That's something that backup units can do, but also any unit that has Lucina equipped can also do it. Um, and I thought that if you inherited this power from her, Dual Assist Plus, that it automatically basically turned you into a backup unit, and it does not. As you can see, the very first sentence in the description is, if unit is able to chain attack, unit will do so when allies attack foes, blah, 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 blah. I misread that, and I thought that it would give any unit the ability to chain attack. So I went all in on dual assist with both her and like I didn't realize this until the very end of the game because I gave this to another late game unit, and I didn't realize it until I realized that neither one of them was proccing, and I was like, why don't these characters ever attack? And then I went in and I reread it, and I was like, oh, it's because they don't do that, and I gave them a useless ability. So I guess if you're like going into Fire Emblem for the first time, just be aware that Fire Emblem doesn't stop you from doing things that aren't going to be good, right? It doesn't stop you from reclassing a character from a good class into a class that doesn't work for them. It doesn't stop you from having them inherit abilities that they're not even able to use. Like, it does not stop you from doing that. It's not even like an are you sure? Like, nope, it just lets you do it. So you got to be careful. So I was like, well, I already spent all these resources. It's literally easier for me because the resources that you spend to inherit abilities are so expensive or so rare. As like it's literally easier for me to just reclass the main character into something that does take advantage of it. So I reclassed her into hero, and I'm pretty happy with it. Hero's a strong class. It was late enough in the game that the stat growths didn't matter too much, but hero gets an ability where they can attack twice sometimes when they go into a chain attack. So that made her very strong because she's got good stats. And also it gave her this like really weird costume, right? When like basically in their base units that they come in, characters have like their basic costume, which is sometimes like really fancy or whatever. But if you train them into any other class, other with an asterisk, but most other classes, they will change to that class's outfit. And this outfit is so weird. It's like a giant breastplate with like this neck thing that goes around with a veil on it. And I wonder if like maybe the male version of this, that veil is a cape, and this character doesn't have it because her hair is so long. Because you can have a male version of the main character. But also, right, it's like that, then like metal hips, like a kind of a cod piece, but then like these leather things across the stomach, and I can't tell if that, see like right above the cod piece there's like some space between that and the first belt, is that flesh, is that exposed flesh? It's hard to tell because her skin's the same color. So I don't know. Anyway, that's the main character. Hopefully this is gonna take forever if I keep going like this. So another unit I ran, Yunaka. I retrained her into a wolf rider, which is not anything that's going to make her better. She starts as a thief, and thief is an excellent class. But I taught her avoid +20 and reposition, so she's basically impossible to hit, especially if she's like in terrain that increases avoidance. I guess this is relevant too. In the game, you can basically marry your main character can marry someone, and in this one, I married Yunaka, and that's why, because I got this before the DLC, and you literally don't have enough emblems because there's 12 emblems and 14 characters by the end of that you can field. I gave both of them no emblems so that they can use Alir's engage power exclusively. Cedal, not much to say about Cedal. He's amazing, best unit in the game. If you are not running him, you should run him because it's just too good. Harvester says, that is indeed pretty charming. Pixely sprites have been doing it for me since I fell in love with FF Tactics. Yeah. Harvester says, my only FE experience has been Awakening, and I'm not sure if I finished the main campaign for it. It was pretty neat, but couldn't hold me. I mean, that's fair. Pleated folds are cool, although the one-piece bottoms are an odd compliment for sure. Part-time heavy armor. Yeah, and Fire Emblem definitely has, like, tons of just ornate armor that is like only for looking cool, right? Anyway, Sidal, you should run him. I gave him HP plus 10 and quality time. Could probably afford quality time. Oh, yeah, quality time plus. And I'm running. I just parked Sigurd on him. It's a bit of a loss of one AOE attack because Sidal never attacks. But also I didn't have to teach him Canter Plus, so there you go. ATA is not considered a very good unit, but I played her because I like the way she looks. There's actually a lot, like if you just look at the faces just across here, there's a lot of redheads on this team, especially if you count the main character as a redhead. But yeah, I just like the way she looked, and early game she actually did tons for me. I taught her Canter right away and turned her into a bow knight, which is like a mounted archer. And later in the game, I just gave her Roy to have the ring on her because she also has a sword proficiency. So I was like, well, she's already very good with bows, so I'll give her something to like boost up her sword abilities. And she's good. I can count on one hand the number of times her like original ability procced, because I use very little or very rarely use like actual recovery items. Usually I just rely on staves. So I any unit that you put a significant amount of time into gets good, right? So Zelkov is great. I kept him as a thief. No reason to change him. Gave him hit plus 15 and luck plus 6. I don't think he needs the hit plus 15. This was me like trying to like getting reacquainted with Fire Emblem mechanics. By the end of the game, he doesn't need that hit. Harvest says, "Oh, Curious Dance in Landscape." I read Curious Dan and had several questions. Yeah, that would be fun if he had an ability. If a character not named Dan had an ability called Curious Dan. He says, Rodrigo's Roost of Rambunctious Redheads. Love to see a tradition maintained. Yeah. It's like my wife's a redhead, so clearly I must have a thing for redheads, right? Chloe, who is not a redhead, but maybe, if you don't count Sidal, the best unit in the game. Chloe is really strong. I made her a Falcon Knight. I taught her resistance plus 4 so she could go up against mages even harder, and momentum so that she could deal extra damage when she hits. Basically when she charges in. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm not going to talk about like weapons that I like pumped up or whatever. Clan I didn't use, but as I was ending this run, I was like, I was looking at the end of this run, I was starting to look at stats again, because I was like, yeah, this is interesting. For some reason, like for me, it's like interesting to look at all these stats, and like Clan starts out as a wizard, but he's a terrible wizard. So I was like, what if I reclass them into like a barbarian or something, or a berserker? So this is me kind of messing with that a little bit, but he wasn't in this run, basically. As soon as I could get rid of him, I got rid of him. Citrine starts out as a wizard, and then I reclassed her into bigger wizard. Again, like all of these characters that have like healing item abilities, I rarely ever ended up using that ability because mostly I rely on staves. I taught her resistance plus 3 and gentility, which makes her a lot tougher. Like basically, if she gets hit, she can tank a little bit of that damage. Lapis really became a real workhorse because I paired her up with Ike, and so that made her extremely tough and really difficult to hit. She naturally has high speed, so I taught her Alacrity, and very often she's taking 2 attacks before the enemies get to go. Again, you'll hear people say that Lapis is actually not a very good unit, and they're probably right, but if you, like, Fire Emblem allows you to invest in characters. Like, if you invest resources into a character, most characters eventually get good. Some of them are just bad all the way through, but most characters that are like middling or pretty good, you can make excellent by spending time and resources on them. Saphir, you get pretty late in the game, but I really like this character. I don't know if you've seen that thing floating around that tells you what the canonical ages for characters in Fire Emblem Engage are, and it's ridiculous. Like, all the characters I just talked about are like teenagers, except for Zelkov. They're like no older than 18. And Saphir, who is like this like badass lady who I would look at her and be like, well, she's like 50, right? It's like, this is a badass 50-year-old lady. It's like, no, canonically she's like 35 or like 40. And I'm like, what? But it's like, yeah, all of the ages, like, if you look at a character, if you're like, oh, well, this is a warrior lady, like, clearly she has to be 20. It's like, no. Subtract at least 5 years from each character. 5 to 10 years, that's how old the characters are. The only ones that fit are the ones that are actual children. So, like, Jean is like 14 or something like that, or 16. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, let's talk about Jean. Jean is a really powerful character. He doesn't start out powerful, but his ability basically makes it so that every time you roll to increase, like the machine, like the computer rolls each level up to see if a stat increases. Jean levels twice or rolls twice. Is like, if it fails, he rolls again. So he gives you, I think it's technically a like 15% higher chance to get a good stat. So his stats are always going to be very good by the end of the game. So you can actually make Jean any unit you want, and he will perform, which is pretty fantastic. But in this one, I didn't get him too far away from what he starts out with, which is like a little healer guy. So I taught him Gentility and Mentorship. Gentility makes him take less damage when he gets hit. Mentorship gives bonus XP to him and to all units around him.
Good evening. Just listened to the masterful Asmodeus Rugpool again. Masterful work.
Thank you, Saint JW, for the subscription, and thank you for the compliments. If you listen to Critical Hit, I think that's one of the big sort of touchstones that everybody was like, what? Like, not everybody remembers all the jokes and not everybody remembers all the side characters, but that's one that everybody was pretty united on. Let's see. Harvestry says, could you let me know, please, does FE combat and class structure still mostly use a rock, paper, scissors weapon circle? Yes, it does. It stopped, like, it didn't do it in the last game, but it's back this game. And it's actually implemented in the best way, as far as I'm concerned. Because usually it was just extra damage. But here there's a system where if you hit someone with the weapon that their weapon is weak to, they are then unable to counterattack. And counterattacks are a big deal in Fire Emblem. So, yeah, the rock, paper, scissors is not only back, it's actually implemented in the best way that I've seen in the series. Malone says, hi, hey. Horsepoint says, a haggard crone of 35. Yeah, definitely. Malone says, oh, are we getting to anime character age discussion? Let's not. But, I mean, I guess since we already are, the main character is, if you look at her age, like her canonical age, it says 17 asterisk. And that asterisk is that she's actually more than 1,000 years old. So, yeah. Oh, Japan. Yeah, our 16-year-old grizzled military veteran. Even anime characters have adults playing teens, yeah. Horizon says, I just listened to that again recently too. Rocked my world just as much the second time around. Yeah, it's hardcore. Like, the players do not see it coming. I'm not like a video game where, like, video games tell you, hey, you better prepare for this one because something's gonna happen. Just get right into it. Harvey says, I love how there are several Asmodeus rug pulls too. That's true. Um, okay, that's cool. Glad to know they're committing to it and honing in. Yeah. Horseman says, I only discovered the key post-credit scene at the end of Celestial Crusade on my most recent listen through. I can't believe I missed it the first time. Oh, the cat. Yeah. Yep. Steven is actually fond of post-credit scenes, so if you're listening to Critical Hit, you might want to, at the very least, scroll till the very end of the episode to see if there's something there, because very often, not very often, but always when it matters, there's something at the end of the copyright thing. Hope that wasn't a bad sound. Okay. Just a few more. Rosado, you get as a Wyvern Knight. I changed nothing about him. Rosado is perfect the way he is. Hilarious character, very strong, good growths. I gave him Speed Taker and Alacrity because his speed is not the greatest. But after getting a couple kills on the battlefield, he's basically double attacking all over the place. Very strong critter. I gave him, or a character, I gave him Leaf to I gave him Leaf because Leaf has this thing where, like, when you get attacked, you can actually switch weapons to the weapon that's most convenient. And Rosado gets spears and axes, so I was like, well, this will be helpful, right? Probably my favorite character, Panette. Not just a very cool looking character, but also a character whose backstory is interesting, and who has like fun support conversations. I got a huge use out of Panette, but I probably didn't use her correctly because I parked Emblem Erica on her pretty much for the whole game. As soon as I got it, I gave her Erica. And Erica is good at preventing you from taking damage, and Panette wants to take damage so that her Blood Fury ability triggers. Like, basically with Panette, you have to give her either Ike or Leaf, who care about like low hit points. It did mean that I never had to worry about Panette having low hit points because Erica also gives you the ability to recover hit points by hitting things, and she's very good at hitting things. I gave her Dual Assist Plus and Dexterity Plus 5 to fish for crits. Very good character, very reliable. Jade was a similar thing as Clan. She actually wasn't in this playthrough. I was just messing around with her, and that's why she's higher up. Spoiler alert, Vale. Again, spoiler alerts for Fire Emblem Engage. Towards the end of the game, you have like your party is 10 characters for a lot of the game, and then they like allow you to field 12 characters. And I would say for the majority of the game, you have 12 characters to field. At the end of the game, they give you 2 new units, and on top of like the 30 something that you get. And they expand your party to 14. And it's pretty smart because Vale is a plot relevant character, and they're like, hey, I bet you none of the other characters you have are the correct level because you've been focusing on these 12 characters. And they were right. And so I had to field Vale. And Vale is fine. I enjoyed it. Vale is the other character that I said earlier that I screwed up with. I thought that I could just teach her, because she comes in with a bunch of SP, which is the thing that you use to inherit, which is very rare and difficult to get. So I taught her Dual Assist Plus, or either Dual Assist or Dual Assist Plus. And then just a little bit later realized that actually wouldn't work on her. So I taught her some other stuff, Quality Time and Dexterity Plus 3, pretty low end stuff. and I just gave her Lucina so that she could actually get in on chain attacks. And lastly, I believe, is Anna, who comes to you as an axe warrior. Then I classed her into hero so she could use axes and swords, and then I reclassed her again into a sniper when the party expands to 14, because I had been using her, and then when I got Saphir, I was like, okay, well, here's a good opportunity to field one less redhead so that it doesn't feel like that's all I'm doing. Um, Although you could argue that Anna's hair is brown, but I don't think it is. Um, like it's anime brown, right? It's like a bright red is like, oh, this character has normal hair because it's not like pink, right? So anyway, when I got Saphir, I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to use Anna anymore, because also she's a child, right? So I was like, here's a good opportunity for me to reduce the redhead count, field one less child soldier, and feel like a dark-skinned older lady, which is like so rare in games like this. So yeah, no stat uh, thought went into that, which you would think that it wouldn't have, because actually Anna's stats are really good and Saphir's stats are like so-so. But anyway, when the party expanded again, I was like, well, I gotta start using Anna again. So she had to catch up. But as it turns out, she always had like this S rank in bows. So I turned her into a sniper, and she was actually really good. So good time. And that's my first run. If you've played the game, then you know that aside from a couple of like slightly wacky changes, like I pretty much kept every character on the track they were in or on, and I didn't do anything too weird. But definitely, so this was on normal, right? I didn't, which is the lowest difficulty, um, and I didn't, because I kind of wanted, I always play, like, if a game tells me that this is a normal difficulty, that's the difficulty I'm going to play in. As it turns out, normal might be, like, normal is easy, hard is normal, and, maddening is hard, right? Um, but, so I just figured I'd play it on normal, and it did. It allowed me to basically play with units that maybe don't have like the absolute best stats, and I didn't, I only lost a unit every once in a while, and then I just reset, and tried it again. Let's look at my second playthrough. Let's see. Sinjidil says, but you did kind of tell them several times. They just brushed past it. Yeah, that's the best kind of thing, right? Where you like foreshadow it, and the players just don't get it, don't get what's happening. Malone says, I totally thought Auron, the older mentor character in Final Fantasy X, like Obi-Wan type, was like 50 to 60, great temples and all. Turned out he was like 36. Yeah, it's like these guys don't know ages, or like maybe they're like really leaning into this being like a medieval game, and it's like people only live to be 40, and by that point their bodies are completely spent.
Engage.
Continue. Okay. So this is my second run through. This is the run through that I started on stream. Just once, Harvester says, just once it would be cool to see 32, but also 786 years old in an anime protag. Right? It's like, oh, this character is 1,000 years old, but they look like, yeah, they look 45. Like, yeah, just. Yo. Hey, Rodimus, thank you for the subscription. I appreciate it. We're looking at my Fire Emblem groups, and I'm talking about what I did with them. I don't think the chat is super interested in it necessarily. They're just kind of here to hang out, but I'm going to try to throw this on YouTube later and maybe get some Fire Emblem hits off of that. Okay, so my second run was a lot more chaotic. Just a lot more stuff going on, because I also got the DLC, and the DLC really warps things. It makes for a very different play experience. So here's my main character again. This time I called her Pilar. And right off the bat, I turned her into a Griffin Knight. So again, not using her dragon class. And she's pretty strong as a Griffin Knight. The main problem with it is that flyers, the problem, quote unquote, is that flyers want to fly. Like, flyers get a huge amount of movement, and they can like run over and help units that are in trouble, especially a Griffin Knight who also has the ability to heal. And the issue with that is that Pilar's innate ability, Divinely Inspiring, wants her to be adjacent to as many characters as possible so that they can both deal more damage and also take less damage, right? And as a flyer, I was always sending her out to do something, to like finish off an enemy, to do something. So she was never at the center of the phalanx. And I don't think, again, I did this on normal too, so it's not like it cost me. But I just, I was just like not using that ability very much, which sucks because it's a very strong ability. I gave her Gentility Plus and Canter. Gentility Plus, again, every time she gets hit, she takes 5 less damage. And like, this game's damage values are pretty low, right? It's like she has 60 hit points. This is like the highest level that I got her to, and she has only 60 hit points. So if an enemy deals like 35 hit points on one hit, this drops it down to 30. That's very relevant, right? So it's actually pretty good. Next up is Marin, a character that I didn't use last time. I kept her as a Wolf Knight. Very cool character. In fact, part of her thing is that she's so cool. It's funny, her support with Rosado, her support conversation with Rosado is really good. So I gave her Draconic Hex and Dexterity +4 to fish for those crits. As it turns out, so Draconic Hex debuffs enemies when you hit them, but she was getting so many crits and just killing so many enemies that the Draconic Hex rarely ever procced. This is one of the things that made me think, maybe I should play this game on hard difficulty, because I keep finding all of these cool things that just like crank more value out of your units, but the enemies are weak enough that like it doesn't really do anything. And I'll tell you guys about it when I get to another character. Zelkov I ran again, and I changed him into a Sword Master, which is not better than Thief, but he did pretty okay. About a few levels in, I put Tiki on him, and Tiki turns whoever equips her as her engage ability into an actual dragon. So Zelkov spent a lot of this game turned into a big pink dragon, which until recently I only thought about it and I was like, wow, I can't believe that I did that to Zelkov. Dark-skinned characters in media already keep getting turned into like bears and frogs and little blobs and pigeons, and I was like, I can't believe I did this to Zelkov. It's reprehensible. And later on I looked up the stats, and actually backup classes don't get as much value out of Tiki, so it was like a weirdly bad decision no matter what. But it actually, like, because Tiki just makes your unit so good, it's fine, you can put her on anything. Racial politics aside. I used Jean again, and this time I was like, you know what? Now that I understand how Jean's stats work, I'm just going to turn him into something completely different. So I turned him into a warrior. So instead of being like a little healer boy, I gave him an axe and a bow, and he just obliterates. His stats are really good. He's really strong. I gave him strength and dex +2, which you can get from the DLC, one of the DLC emblems. And I gave him momentum. And momentum is good on archers. Like, a lot of people don't talk about this because I think most people don't play Fire Emblem the same way that I do, which is that I create a very tight phalanx and just sort of like slowly move it and let enemies come and attack me and then try to tank the hits. And then once enemies are close to the phalanx is like blah, 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 and like devours them. So if what momentum does is it gives you like +1 damage to per square that you move. So you're like, well, if the phalanx moves so slowly, he probably doesn't get very much. But what he does get is that, you know, the phalanx moves, but enemies sometimes attack from all directions. So if I'm fighting on 2 fronts, I can move him from whatever front he's in to the other one, and that's, you know, 4 squares of movement. So that's +4 damage, right? And then once he's attacked there, next round, or if I dance him, he can just come right back around and use that momentum again and hit for a higher amount of damage. So it actually works out pretty well. In this run, so this is the run that I started on stream, and I was like, this is my no royals run. And you might have noticed, again, if you know the game, that there were also no royals on my team in the last one. And that's something that just kind of happened accidentally, as I was like just using characters that I visibly liked. The only thing that was sad about that last one is that Tamara wasn't doing it for me. Like, I really wanted to have her on the team, but I already had too many like backup stabby guys that were already working well, so I benched her. And I kind of regret that a little bit, so maybe in my next run I'll use Tamara, who is actually supposed to be really ferocious. So yeah, so this is my no royals run. I actually had to rely on the kids a lot more, so I actually, in this run, there are 4 children in this game that join your group, and I used all 4. So the last one had like 1 child soldier. This one is like 4 child soldiers. So it's like a huge percentage. Let's see what you guys are saying. What does the chat need to say for SEO? What you guys need to say is TikTok, Jack Harlow, Billie Eilish. I don't know. Billie Eilish is probably already passe. That's how, like, I'm like, I don't even know what's hot right now. But no, you guys don't need to say anything for SEO. Just be your beautiful selves. That's all we care about. Rodimus says, I haven't played Fire Emblem yet. Definitely need to. Yeah, Fire Emblem's a lot of fun. Again, I've played through this game twice already. And I'm kind of gearing up for a third one. I think that I'm probably not going to finish it, because that's literally what happened with Three Houses, is I finished the game all the way through twice, and then in the third round, I ran out of steam, like other games came out that I wanted to play, so I'm not expecting that I'm actually going to play all the way through the third run, but we'll see. So anyway, Fram, these characters, Fram and Clan are like the worst names. Fram I kept I turned into a martial master, which is kind of where she wants to go. She's a great healer. I gave her Canter so she could move after healing. And gave her Avoid +15 so that she's hard to hit. And somewhere along the line I realized that she's actually a very good melee unit. So I started putting her in the front line a lot more. But that didn't really change things. Except that I had another frontline unit if I needed to plug a hole or something. So, yeah, turned out to be a pretty good unit. Better than I expected. I wanted to run Rosado again, but I already had a lot of flyers. So I turned him into a Thief. And Thief Rosado does pretty good. Rosado is a good unit in general, I think. And as long as you're putting him in something like that deals damage, that deals like physical damage, like weapon damage, I think he's going to do okay. I should say, So Jean, I gave him Lin because of the bow attacks. It, allows him to like snipe from 1,000 miles away. Fram, I gave her Byleth because she's mostly in the back row and she can do the goddess dance. Rosado, I gave him Makaya towards the end because I just kind of needed to have another healer, and also he was a little bit under leveled. So number one way in basically all Fire Emblems to level up your healers is to give them some cheap staves, and just anytime anybody takes any amount of damage, just have him heal. if you're playing something like Engage or a few other games, where there are staffs that do other things that don't require somebody to be down hit points, buy those. If you need to, level up a unit in Engage, put Micaiah on them so that they get automatically able to use staves, and then get an obstruct stave for them. And every turn have them throw up an obstruction, even if it's not helpful or if it's like just random, they will get that level up. The way that characters level up in Fire Emblem is by doing something that gets you XP every turn. Just moving doesn't get you XP. Some of their abilities doesn't give you any XP. But attacking, healing, and using a staff gets you XP. So again, if a character's falling behind, stick Micaiah on them, have them heal, and then use her. If you take enough damage across the board with all your units, have them use her ultimate. They get lots of SP. They get lots of SP and XP. Let's see, Louis. I turned Louis into a Great Knight, which apparently is not that good of a unit, but I wanted to use Louis and I wanted to use Jade, so I turned them both into Great Knights, and they basically became the same unit. I just had two of them. Right off the bat, I gave them both Canter and Reposition as soon as each was available. And that made him really strong. Anytime they weren't attacking, they were helping me move units around, so that was good. Towards the end, I stuck Ike on Jade, so I didn't need her to know Reposition anymore, so I gave her build +3 so that she could use a Brave Axe and sometimes hit things for double, but not a lot of the time. Okay, Clan, right, starts out as a wizard. I turned him into a berserker, and he's much better as a berserker. With Clan, I did the same thing that I did with Panette, which was to put Erica on him, and because Clan doesn't care about losing hit points like Panette does, it actually was just kind of all upside to have this thing that reduces incoming damage and boosts outgoing damage. So yeah, it's pretty good. Strength +2 and dual assist is what I gave him, so just to make sure that he's joining into as many group attacks as possible. Cito, of course, changed nothing. Perfect character, no reason to do anything to him. I gave him the DLC Camilla bracelet because Camilla, when you engage, actually gives you a few squares of extra movement, so that was just gravy. Taught him Canter Plus and Quality Time, because there's no reason not to. Anna, again, starts out as an axe character. I turned her into a horse wizard, and she did really well. I gave her Soren, and Soren is kind of busted. So Soren is a DLC emblem, and when you engage, he has the ability to hit things like 3 to 10 squares away, which is colossal in this game. Nothing else has that range. Maybe there's one spell that has that range, or a similar range, but not, or yeah, somewhat similar. But yeah, so basically, I was just like first round engage, bang, 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 shoot a bunch of enemies. By the time they actually get to my very slow phalanx, all of these enemies had low hit points, right? And if it was long enough, she just, by doing this several rounds in a row, was often able to just kill an enemy before it even saw me, before it was even aggroed. So it's very strong if you put it on a wizard type. I played Chloe again. This time I turned her into a Wyvern Knight. I think she's actually kind of better as a Griffin Knight, even though Wyvern Knights are more like aggressive and have access to more weapons. I think her ability to avoid tank is probably her strongest thing. But, you know, Wyvern, I mean, both of them use her abilities pretty good. Gave her Avoid +15 to sort of get that avoid tank thing going, and then Strength and Dex from the Edelgard emblem. and I gave her Corrin to use, which on flying units, or here, let me see. Yeah, so on flying units, Corrin's Dragon Vein creates a healing area. So that was just kind of helpful. The problem with it is that it's like bright green and it's very hard to see what units are on it. So I always had to move Chloe last because if I did it first, I couldn't tell where like everything was going. Um, since I was playing all the kids, I also decided to play all the old ones too. Um, but that didn't end up happening as much. So I didn't play Vander and I didn't play Mauvier. But I did play Lyndon, who is an okay unit. He's just a very okay unit. He comes in as a Sage. I didn't change that. He gets some damage. I think his ability allows you to, like, has him like increase his crit chance if he's using a lower level tome. I tried that a few times and it didn't proc, so I was like, whatever, I'll just give him a big tome and it'll be fine. So yeah, it wasn't a big deal. Taught him Geosphere from Tiki and Magic +2 from Celica. And then lastly, Saphir again, who this time I turned into a Halberdier. She comes in with like S level axes, and I was like, well, I want to change her into something else, but I'm sad about losing her S axe proficiency. But as it turns out, Halberdier gives you S spear proficiency, so I was like, yeah, that's basically the same thing. So I changed her into that, and this is the character that really made me think maybe I should be playing in hard mode, because with everything I gave her, she is able to take 3 attacks per turn if she's initiating an attack, and there's a way to have her take a 4th attack. So I was like, ooh, look at this, like she's taking so many attacks and dealing so much damage. And most enemies that I sent her up against didn't survive the 2nd attack. So there was no point in like this build that gave her a 3rd attack, right? And potentially a 4th one. So I was like nothing in the game except for bosses can take that many hits. And a lot of the time the bosses, because when you hit a boss and you kill, like some bosses have multiple hit point bars. So when you hit a boss and you kill a whole hit point bar, everything stops, right? You don't get to do like your 2nd hit or whatever. Basically, you just disengage from them. So even then, a lot of the time she wasn't using that 3rd hit. So like I would have to send her against an enemy that is like explicitly like a bad matchup for her in order for her to do it. So towards the end of this run, I was like, maybe I want to start an actual hard run, and so that I can put some of these abilities into effect. Also, this run really worked it out of my system to change characters into random things, right? Like Pilar starts out as a dragon, I changed her into a Griffin Knight. Zelkov starts out as a thief, changed him into a sword master. Jean starts as a healer, changed them into an archer. Fram starts out as, I actually kept her the same. Rosada starts as a wyvern rider, changed them into a thief. Louis starts as a armor knight, changed them into a great knight. Same thing with Jade. Clan starts out as a wizard, changed them into a barbarian. Anna starts out as an axe fighter, turned her into a wizard. Chloe, pretty much the same thing. So hopefully it got out of my system this thing where it's like, oh, I'm gonna take this character and turn him into something else. For a slightly harder run where I'm going to have to like hoard my resources a little bit more tightly. So those are my characters that I used for the last 2 runs. A lot of them are very similar, and there's 2 reasons for that. One, some of these characters are just very good, and 2, in this one I didn't want to use royals, and I didn't use very many royals in the first one anyway, so a lot of the same characters got pushed away. I tried not to use some of the same characters, so as you can see, a lot of the redheads ended up on the bench. But also, this game has a wide variety or sort of like samey looking white boy characters who, do have slightly different personalities, but I'm like I don't remember like these characters from one go to the next, right? So I'm like, I don't think I ever want to run Bunet or Bunet or whatever. Like, I just don't like the way this character looks. I don't know. Same thing with like Amber, right? It's like, yeah. It's like at least Alcris looks sad. Like I'll run this emo little baby. I'll totally run Alcris, regardless of what his abilities are. He's just a royal, so he didn't get into this run. But it's like, at least he looks different, you know? So yeah. In this one, uh, I had the main character marry Zelkov. So that's like, my character has now married both thieves. So does that say something about me? I don't know. It probably is the same thing as the No Royals run, is like, who's like the most downtrodden character in this? I'm gonna marry them. Um, and then they'll have a dragon wife. Yeah, so that's it. Let's see. Malone says, I started Shin Megami Tensei 5. Had forgotten how tough that series is, even on normal difficulty. That's the other thing, is that you can't trust the games, right? A game will be like, this is normal difficulty, and it'll be so hard. And it's like, other games are like, this is normal difficulty, and it's like baby stuff, right? Malone says, fingers absolutely not designed for mobile keyboard. Oh, yeah, well, that happens. Harvester says, we love a hard-hitting gopher, yeah. You're one child soldier short of an Operation Meteor. Yeah, definitely too many child soldiers. I think for the next run, I'm actually considering not running any kids, which is rough because 2 of the kids are some of the best units in the game, so we'll see. That'll definitely push me to use different units, though, if I did that. Malone says, don't need to feel too bad about child soldiers. I'm beyond help for just playing 2 Gundam and mecha games this past year. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's an anime staple, right? So, it happens. Let's see. Harvester says, you gotta commit to an action to earn XP. Good old tactician RPG philosophy. Yeah. Yeah, and actually, so Fire Emblem had some sort of unintentional things that encourage actually defensive play or like less aggressive play, because the way that a Fire Emblem encounter goes is you attack and then the opponent has a chance to counterattack. And if the attacking, if either unit has higher, like significantly higher speed, like speed rating, they get to attack again. So either you go attacker, defender, or attacker, defender, right? So because of that, the style that I developed into playing Fire Emblem was to put like tough units up front, basically this phalanx maneuver, let enemies come to them, attack them, and then get counterattacked. Because if you attack first, then here's what happens. Attack, enemy counterattack. Now you've taken damage. You've both taken damage, so let's say you're at half health. Well, now it's the enemy's turn. And when they attack, they're just going to kill your unit. If you walk up to an enemy and just stand there for them to hit you, then they attack, you counterattack, and now it's your turn. And you get to kill them, right? So the break mechanic, where like if you do the weapon triangle right, they lose a counterattack, and a few other mechanics that are like only on attack and not on counterattack in this game really push you to be more aggressive, right? Like it was clear, like the Fire Emblem guys sat down and they were like, okay, like we don't want this turtling thing to be what everybody does, right? Or like the best way of doing things. So there's a lot of things in this game that encourage you to attack and that mitigate the disadvantage of attacking first, which is weird. It's weird to think that aggressively attacking is at a handicap, but in this system, because of the way it works, it is. So you need other mechanics on top of it to facilitate it. Harvester says Horse Wizard is an excellent class. Horse Wizard is an excellent class, and I don't think you can see it because she's not mounted in this. I wonder if there's a way to see her. I guess there. Let me see. Do I have? Yeah. So, remind me not to save. It doesn't super matter, but. Mage Knight Axe. Where is it? I must have super passed it. Oh. Oh, okay. So I need to... Okay. I guess I can't do it. But anyway, it's... I don't know if there's a way to see it. But Mage Knight, like, for each type of, like, riding character, their horses have different barding. So for Great Knights, like, the horses have, like, huge, like, big, bulky armor on. For Mage Knights, the horses have, like, a little witch hat. Oh, sorry. Which is really weird and funny. Okay. Horse Wizard needs a lozenge. Yep. I think those boys are for ladies. They notice all the differences in fashion designs. I don't know, maybe. Like... there's just aesthetically, it's like even in guy characters, like there's just kind of something I'm looking for, right? Like, it doesn't have to be Rosado, right? Rosado is a male character who like looks like a lady and has like lady movements, right? Because all of these characters have like kind of like stock movements that they do when you're talking to them, and all of Rosado's movements are like lady movements. And it's like, yeah, I love Rosado. He's super fun, but he's also a very cool looking character, right? So it's like, as far as manly characters, I like Louis because he has like Brock from Pokemon eyes, right? It's like, that's fun. What other? Zelkov is cool because he's like a creepy guy and he has dark skin, which is too bad that those two are together. But when you run his conversations, you see that he's not a bad person. Like. Cedal is cool. Maybe I just like guys with long hair. Linden is like an old, like, have you guys seen the Jello Apocalypse? Like, so this is basically Fire Emblem video. If you haven't, you should check it out because he talks about like the 11th hour old man character, and sure enough, here comes the 11th hour old man character. Anyway, Harvester says, another thing that I notice and may not be universal is that the ancient preteen anime characters are also generally well adjusted. If you're going to write an old child, could at least make them effed up, like an effed up little guy, and make it interesting. Yeah, so the problem, like the fundamental problem with that is that stuff is, no one admits it, but that stuff is there for people that like very young people, right? And because they've sort of trained a generation of readers and players and watchers to be into characters like that, characters that are very young but are still basically legal because of their because they're like very old, actually, you see. That's why it's okay. And that sucks. And that's why you don't see, like the ancient dragon child-looking character, be just like a reprehensible little goblin, which would be fun. That's why they're like this like tee-hee-hee little girl, right? Which is unfortunate and uncomfortable, and I don't love it. And the last Fire Emblem game had it with like Sothi, and this game has it with Vale, and it's like, it's not great. I don't love it. But it's a thing. Horseman Man says, Horse Wizard lives in a tower above the horse pond mine. Yep, there you go. Harvester says, "Uh-oh, I don't think we have a command or don't for don't save." That's true. Maybe I should put one in. But I didn't end up doing it anyway, so it's okay. Harvester says, "Yes, horses with witch hats is fantastic." Yeah. Malone says, "At least in RPGs, you can always compensate difficulty by over-leveling it." That's true. And you can level all day long. You can grind forever in this game. I think there was also DLC for easier difficulty added later. Pretty sure I saw it in Switch Store. Well, the DLC, you mean for this game? Or do you mean for Shin Megami Tensei? Because the DLC doesn't lower the difficulty like as a difficulty slider in this one. What it does is it just gives you a lot more options. So if you want to make the game easier for yourself, it's actually not hard to do. Malone says, "It's very much a otome game and boys love manga tropes. There's always a few pretty boys who look pretty much exact clones to me, yet they're always there for a reason in those games." I guess that's right. Hardy says, "Yeah, I know you're right, and I dislike the truth of it. Yeah, Awakening had a cool dragon girl, but she was also eternally 12. Yeah, it's like, it's not just an anime trope, it's a Fire Emblem trope. Like, there is, like, some... Like, last game didn't just have Sothie, it also had Flayn, and I want to say Flayn was also, at least a couple hundred years old. But I don't super remember. But she was also, like, a little girly girl. Okay. So that's me talking about Fire Emblem. Let's... what time is it? Let's... Oh, I almost saved. Give me a second, and we might talk a little bit about Lancer. We'll change it to just chatting for now, while I close up my Switch. Turn it off. Close that. Put on some music. Where is my thing that never works? No, Amazon, I don't want to do that. Gra. Home. Where are my playlists? There we go. There we go. Is it playing? Are you guys hearing music and maybe I'm not hearing it? I don't know. Anyway, forget the music. Don't worry about the music. Malone Haskell says, for Shin Megami Tensei 5, it's kind of notorious for being harder than the average RPG. Sure. Harvester says, I started revisiting Aragon and the Inheritance series via audiobook the other day and enjoying it, and I like what it does with dragons as well as exploring the idea of non-romantic soulmates. Very cool stuff, very formative for me. That's cool. When I was in college, a friend of mine was really into ROMs, and he's actually the person that introduced me to Fire Emblem, because he used to play the Fire Emblems game that were never released in the US just in Japanese, and like I don't think he knew how to speak Japanese. Like he just like figured out what um, all of the prompts meant, and then just played, the original Fire Emblem or like Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War or whatever on his computer. But he also had this game called, was it Bahamut's Lagoon? I think it was. Um, yeah, Bahamut's Lagoon, and it was kind of amazing as a game. Um, it was a game in which you had a ton of troops, but each of your like basically what made one, like if you've ever played like Ogre Battle or Tactics Ogre or whatever, that thing where like you have an army, like a little army unit represented by one guy, and then when they fight, they all like fight together. So in Bahamut's Lagoon, it's dragons. Like each unit is represented by a dragon. Um, so not only um, that's not what I meant to do. Yeah, so like not only would um, were you able to give weapon and armor to your troops, you were also able to um, oh, you were also able to basically feed your dragons different things, and it would give your dragons um, different abilities. And so, for example, if you had a dragon and you fed him like fire stuff, it would become like either a more powerful fire dragon or change into a fire dragon, and then it would allow like your mages to use fire spells. Um, Part of the issue, I think this is a Square game, and it was like really cool, and it was kind of like a tactical grid combat thing. So this is a game, one of the few games where like before like 2010s that I actually played all the way through and then played through again. Like most games, I just never touch again. Recently, that's been less and less a thing because I think now that I'm older, I'm like, this game is good, and there's so many bad games out there that this game like deserves another playthrough. But usually the playthroughs are like back to back. Um, but anyway, yeah, Bahamut's Lagoon was like a weird game, and it never got localized to the U.S. Maybe someday they'll bring it, and you guys and people will get to play it. But if you see it floating around as a ROM, you might want to check it out because it really combines some of the best aspects of like Final Fantasy Tactics type stuff and Fire Emblem, and it has like that dragon mechanic, which is pretty cool. Um, Harvey says, "Oh yeah, nice. I did that when my brother downloaded a ROM of a fully Japanese pixelated DBZ fighting game. Nice." Horseman Mine says, "Bahamut's Lagoon is full of dragons plus one weird little fox lady with a southern accent." Hmm. Harvestry says, "Dragons as armies is pretty neat. We gotta show love to good and enjoyable games." Yeah, definitely. So let's see. Where was I going? I was gonna. Oh, you guys don't need to see my password. Um, so yeah, let's switch gears to Lancer. So I need to write up some stats for my game this weekend. And I apologize. Hang on. I would like to apologize because for some reason the way that Streamlabs and Chrome interact, if I'm using the browser, it doesn't let me just look at the little browser window for web captioner. So while I'm doing stuff on the browser, we're gonna lose captions. But if you're watching this later on YouTube, you can probably use YouTube's captions. So we have that going on. Okay, sorry about that, but yeah. Um, yes, Bahamut Lagoon is one of those Square games kind of highly regarded by some enthusiasts. I'd put Vagrant Story in the same category. Yeah, I would too. I never got to play Vagrant Story for very long, just like a few minutes. But yeah, Vagrant Story looked like a really good, interesting, weird game. So yeah, definitely. Hart says, "Ooh, nice! I picked up Vagrant Story off of eBay a long time ago because I was hungry for more Ivalice content. It was a strange action RPG for me, but it was cool and didn't make weapon types matter. As a spiritual successor, it is an odd duck. Sure. Okay. Where's my browser? All right. So let me see what I already have. I want to use these cataphracts. Let me see if I already have the cataphracts. I think I do. Okay, that's good. So I already have the cataphracts made. Hummingbird, Super Nanite, and Shock and Berserker. So yeah, all of these are already available. So let's go to encounters and make a new encounter. And we'll call it Escort Nightmare plus plus. We don't need to mess with these. I guess I can change this so that stuff is available. Let's add in PCs. So I need the Shock and, well, let's do that last. So I need 2 Tigres. So these are cataphracts. Cataphracts are very fast-moving, like hard-hitting troops. And I think they're good for escort stuff because they can really throw your party out of like alignment with like the payload that they're trying to move. So we'll add at least 2. Then I wanted to add the Hummingbird, which is a Mirage mech, which kind of messes with the party systems. And then to SN Deluxe Hive mechs. And hives basically create swarms of nanites that prevent your PCs, or rather, they just deal damage to your PCs if they try to move through them. So they're good for like bottlenecking them, especially if you're dealing damage to them in some other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's like how many players there are. There's like 4 players. So I kind of have a budget of like double the amount of players. So I think, actually, let me double check. It doesn't say the budget, but yeah, I'm gonna throw in double the amount. So then I think I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I think I'm just gonna add like a ludicrous amount of shock ends as reinforcements because they're berserkers, but they're also what do you call it? Like minions. They're not called minions in this, but they just have 1 hit point. Everything else though is like the same, so they actually hit very hard. So 5, 6, 7, 8. So I can throw in 12. Yeah, let's try it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. This is a lot of damage. We'll see. We'll see how the players do with it. This is Comp Con, by the way. It's very good for um, both for making characters and also for managing an encounter. Because you can actually go to like Mission Runner.
Finally on browser, let's Bream.
Yeah, thank you, Harvestry. I appreciate it. And also, I personally, I'm also annoyed that you can't use your Prime subs on mobile because mobile is the main way in which I watch Twitch. So yeah, I always have to like, I'm never by my computer when I want to give my Prime sub to whatever I'm watching, right? Um, so you can do a mission runner, and so this allows me to look at pretty much everybody's stats at a glance. Um, to move the round along is like after somebody acts, I can deactivate them, right? So now they're like over here. Um, it's very good. The main problem with it is that it's been like for certain players or for certain people, it's been having this issue where it just like it doesn't record your session. So next time you log on, it just looks at the last thing it had in the cloud, and basically you lose a bunch of progress, right? Literally the other day, a player sent me the info what they wanted to get. I updated their character, didn't go through the arcane process of like telling it to ignore the cloud, um, and lost everything. Not everything, but lost all the progress, which is very annoying. So then we'll go to override cloud. So yeah, we'll try that. I still have to do a little bit of tweaking, but that'll be good for now. That actually didn't take very long. I forgot that I had already loaded up all of these guys to remind myself of what I wanted to have. So, yeah. Okay, let's just chatting, I guess. Okay, captions. Moving over to the caption so you can caption again. Okay. Let's see. Har says, I just had an iOS update for Twitch, and if they still haven't enabled Prime subscriptions on the app, I am frustrated to conclude they ain't gonna. That yeah, it's. I don't know. Oh. Actually, yeah, they may never do it. Well, I don't know. I was gonna say like because maybe Apple wants to get a cut of that, but it's not going through the Apple store, so I don't know. I don't know why that is. Ignore the cloud, old man. Over my dead body. Yeah, It's really annoying because CompCon is so good. Like it is like the best character creation app that I've ever seen. It's just like perfectly suited for Lancer. Unfortunately, because it's having these problems, it makes it really unreliable. So I'm just hoping that the next update gets rid of those problems because, yeah, it just really sucks to, especially for my players who aren't as familiar with Lancer. Like they're sitting there and they're looking at all their options and they're picking stuff out. And then to lose that progress, it's like it's hard to do that stuff again if you're not super familiar with like what it is that you were looking for or picking. So it sucks. Harvester says, if the Apple Shop gets the cut on paid subs, I doubt they will allow this. One way to not pay them, even though The parent company explicitly made it. Yeah, so that's it. If Apple gets a cut of subs through Apple devices, then that may be a reason why Prime will never work. Um, Harvester says, "Oh yeah, it can be daunting to rebuild minuscule changes." Yeah, absolutely. Like Lancer is not a crunch light system, right? It's really not. It's like a medium, definitely. Part of the reason why I like it is because it's a lot lighter than a lot of other games about mechs, right? It's like for some reason mech games tend to be extremely dense, but Lancer is only kind of dense. So that's one point for Lancer, right? But yeah, when you're a new player, you're trying to get through all this stuff. Lancer uses an unusual sort of structure to level up. So it's tough. It can be tough if you don't fully understand it. And yeah, if I walk a player through it, they might not fully understand, where things are going at the time. And then if things get erased, it's just the worst. And again, that literally happened to me yesterday when I was loading a player's choices, and it made me super mad, which sucks because again, otherwise, CompCon is very good. What else? What else is going on? Trying to think of what else I've been doing. Have you seen Apocalypse Frame at all? It's another mech game with a nice level of crunch. No, I haven't. I haven't checked it out. I'm very slow about taking up other RPGs, like Brian, D&D Brian or TTRPG Brian. He's very good at like he'll just get a game, read all the way through it, like file it away. Like for me, I have to like switch gears to that game. Like if I'm running Exalted or whatever, and you're like, hey, here, read Blades in the Dark, I have to be like, and like kind of like move stuff around so that it'll fit. And right now, I'm playing Lancer. I'm running Lancer. I'm running Exalted, and I'm playing in Steven's, on Critical Hit on Steven's Achtung Cthulhu game. So that's a lot of systems. So getting into a new system will be difficult. If for no other reason that like just the time it takes to read it. When am I gonna fit another Fire Emblem playthrough if I have to read all these RPGs? No, I'm actually like kind of allowing myself to feel a little bit of crunch here because also I'm writing for the Beacon RPG, and I expected that by February I was going to be a lot farther along. So I'm definitely going to do a lot of writing in the next few months to catch up. But it'll be good. It'll be fine. Hardest says relatively lower complexity for the system compared to its peer sounds pretty good then. No idea how often I will repeat it, but one day I will look into Lancer in earnest. Sure, yeah, I mean, no hurry. Lancer's there. Harvester says, I am very stoked for Beacon's development. Yeah. Um, the artist formerly known as D&D Brian. Yeah, definitely more and more. Do you want to associate your brand with D&D? The answer may be no. Harvester says, good luck on writing and development. Thank you. Yeah, it's coming along. Like anytime I sit down to write in it, I write out a ton. Like I've got that setting because I'm writing a setting document basically. Like pretty much the setting is there in my brain. I just have to like translate it into words. And anytime I actually sit down to write, I'm just like boop 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 boop. I know exactly what I'm writing, right? I don't have to like come up with stuff as I write it. But yeah, the actual putting things to paper takes a while, and then like editing it, you want to go back and um, fix all your typos and make sure that you didn't use the word like incredibly like 10 times in 10 sentences. Like these guys' technologies is incredibly powerful, and they are able to fire incredibly powerful beams, which are incredibly accurate, right? It's like unless you're going for something for like a narrative voice that's like a particular way, you don't want to do that. And yeah, when you're just like bah, 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 like hammering it out, it's a lot easier to get that. Let me change to just chatting. Just chatting. I guess I should change the So what else? Horseman says, one of my oldest groups came together over 4E. We've since transitioned to much more story-focused games, but I kind of want to play Lancer or Beacon with them for old tide's sake. Yeah, they're gonna get a lot of like, if they enjoyed the tactical side of fourth edition, then they're gonna enjoy Lancer. Like Lancer draws a lot from fourth edition, and therefore so does Beacon, because Beacon draws a lot from Lancer. Harvester says, I have been chipping away at my own project just for me, which makes it daunting given the volume and complexity. To graft onto D&D 5e to make Monster Hunter aspects work in my setting. I'm also developing for it. It's been cool lately to hit some breakthroughs on design options I had been stuck on. That's good. Yeah. Yeah, definitely if you're just doing design for yourself, um, it's both, right? It's like a little bit of the pressure is off because it doesn't matter if you don't finish it, but also you like it's easy to under appreciate it, right? To be like, well, should I keep working on my thing, or like there's dishes that need doing, it's like obviously, well, I gotta go do the dishes, and then like maybe there won't be enough time or as much time as I want. um or just other projects, right? Or like work, or whatever, sleep. Like, I think when you're like on the hook to turn something into a company or something like that, you at least have that to show yourself and be like, hey, we need to work on this, right? Otherwise, it's never going to get done. Harvester says, but a friend who is a professional game designer suggested I also write it to work for Pathfinder 2E, as its crowd will be into additional crunch and modularity. I may look at that to learn the system at some point, but for now, I want the 5e version to solidify. Sure. Again, if it's just for you, it doesn't matter. Um, what does become a thing is like sometimes when you do a lot of work and you have something pretty complete, you can be like, I just want this to be a game that I publish. And then it can be an issue because then now you're dealing with, you know, copyright issues or whatever. Um, but a lot of games start out that way, right? Like, what is it? I don't want to say it wrong. I think it's like Gubat. Is it Gubat Buana? Banwa. Gubat Banwa is a game that uh, people are really into right now. Um, and it started out as a like kind of a companion to Exalted's Dragon Blooded, and then eventually the writer was like, you know what? I'm just gonna do this. I was gonna do this on my own. And they changed up some stuff and they added some stuff, and then they published it. It's kind of tearing it up right now. People are really into it. I can't recommend it officially because I haven't read it, but yeah, everything I hear about it, like people are like super into it. So that's maybe something else to check out. And that happens, a lot of like you hear about that all the time. You hear about that in video games where somebody is like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do my take on Zelda." And then after a while they're like, "Well, I want to add this and this and this." So this isn't really a Zelda game anymore. And it's like, "Oh, I completed the game, so I'm just going to put it out there for people to play." Um, and that's how you end up with a lot of like those small indie games or medium indie games. I mean, look, I say Undertale, right? Like Undertale was completely done by one person, which I wouldn't recommend, but it's possible. People do it. Um, Gubat Banwa is the other game I'm considering for my old 4E group. Yeah, I hear it's very good. I haven't played it, but like I still haven't read Blades in the Dark. I haven't read Cortex. I haven't read Blades in the Dark. I haven't read. There's some other game that is like pretty big right now. I haven't read Coyote and Crow. Um, I haven't read Gubat Banwa, but from what people tell me about Gubat Banwa, I kind of want to move it to the top of the list. Um, I literally have the books for Cortex and Blades in the Dark, and I still haven't read them. So it would be funny if like this book that I don't even own, like I'd go out, buy the book, right, and start reading it before any of the books that I actually have left to run. Um, Hers says, haha, yeah, I am mindful of not crossing into just make my own system for it territory. Yep, that's a bit of a trap, but it's also good. I mean, it's tough. Um, I think everybody has like these pet ideas of what they would do with Dungeons and Dragons to fix it. Like whatever you don't like about Dungeons and Dragons, lots of people are like, yeah, okay, I play Dungeons and Dragons. Here's what I would do to fix it, right? Fix some of its problems, and some of them are probably good fixes, but that's an absolute trap too, um, because like there's no point in spending time on D&D, right? To try and like do anything to help D&D. Like D&D doesn't need your help and it doesn't want your help. It wants your content. So definitely something that's just for you. You know, it's like obviously you take off whatever system you're using and that's fine. But yeah, if you're going into something where you're like, hey, I'm gonna write out like a friend of mine. I think I talked about it on here. He and I forget what the actual books are called now. But we were going to do a game with a system that is like a D&D 5th edition plus, and it just has tons of options. Just so many more options. Your characters get so much more stuff every level. Like all the classes are completely reworked to work with the new options, and like so you can like take those options as part of like your class growth and stuff. And I'm like the whole time I'm like, why would you waste this much work on 5th edition? Like this is like build your own game territory. You should have really just done that. Like I know that a lot of people are like, "Oh, if I don't if I don't make it part of 5th edition, it won't sell." And that's basically the what the impetus was, right? For what happened with the OGL, right? Wizards kind of changed the OGL and people freaked out because for a lot of people that's their livelihood and they have hitched their systems to D&D. And it's like, well, maybe you shouldn't, you know. Just if you are envisioning something that you're going to do for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition and it's huge and it requires like revising systems and stuff, consider just making your own game, right? Like figure out what the absolute like what you can do, like maybe change the dice or whatever because you can't copyright systems. So you can have systems that are closed, just use like maybe different dice or whatever, and are called different things, and then they can't sue you. So it's more work. It's definitely more. It's like more work for less. It's more work for less exposure, but then you have complete control of your IP, right? So you can just do whatever you want with it. Lancer as a game is doing well. It's doing okay as far as like money coming in, and that's the creators decided to just do their own thing. Coyote and Crow. Well, Coyote and Crow is a D&D thing, isn't it? It's like it's off of D&D 5e. Like, and there's always other systems that are less onerous, like Powered by the Apocalypse, like Forged in the Dark, like whatever else. It just makes things a lot easier as far as creating your own thing. Again, you lose the exposure of putting something on the Game Masters Guild or of being like, this is compatible with the greatest game in the world or whatever. But yeah, if you can, just do your own game, do it on your own. Um, Hardster says, I don't think I've read many new tabletop RPGs over one page in a couple of years, apart from Edge of the Empire, I suppose. Last before that was Ryutama in early 2020. Okay. Horseman says, yeah, it's a pretty cool read. I really enjoy how intensely informed by its location it is. Like a lot of the games coming out of Southeast Asia right now, it's just really exciting to see. Yeah, it's great. It's great that we do get things like Gubat Banwa and like Coyote and Crow that are like, hey, here's something that's not influenced by as much, because there's always going to be that something that's not influenced as much by like colonialism, right? The other one is like Into the Motherlands, right? Is that what it's called? And that one is definitely a D&D thing. I don't remember if Coyote and Crow is a D&D thing. Hardison says, yeah, a full system overhaul is huge and is definitely beyond my goals and all, and that's perfectly fine. You just kind of got me talking about it. I didn't mean that you should do that. What I'm working on would be specific to my setting and its companion campaigns, and would be opt-in for players who wanted to have higher combat complexity explicitly for martial classes. Yeah. Harvester says, "Hey, have you considered maybe don't?" That's one of my quotes, for D&D. It's like so. There's like a pamphlet that has my face on it. Is like considering start like doing your game in D&D 5e, and like you open it is like maybe don't. Like that's all the information it has, right? Um, Horseman Mind says, or honestly, use an open source system that is easier to work with. There are a ton of great dice games out there you can pick from depending on what your game needs. Forged in the Dark games give a certain feeling that is totally different than D20 or Powered by the Apocalypse. Yeah, that's the thing. Is like if you are tagging onto a different system, you just have to find a system that works, right? I think Cortex also allows you to use their system, but definitely double check that. Cortex is kind of a more solid kind of catch-all standard type of system, right? Like Powered by the Apocalypse really wants you to play to find out. So it's hard to plan. Like if you're, I feel like if you're running a Powered by the Apocalypse game properly, it's hard to plan ahead. Like everything's gonna emerge out of play, and that is sometimes like that'll clash with people that come from Exalted D&D, Vampire, whatever that where like the game master has to like basically come up with the story, right? Um, Harvester says, I wonder if it could be strategic to make a small but punchy add-on for something mainstream like D&D 5e and use that as an intro to a full system that uses that setting and those elements and vibes that would sell players on the content. Maybe, but you'd have to do it carefully. Horseman Man says, you lose the exposure, but you also get out of massive slurry of content that comes out of D&D like every day. That's true. I mean, that is definitely true. You're right. Al Grave says, good evening, y'all. Longtime Major Spoiler / Critical Hit fan. Glad to catch you live. Hey, thanks for coming in. We appreciate it. Let's see. Quote 12 is gonna pay my way in blood to the championship. That's a good one. Yeah, that sounds like an excellent pamphlet. I think so. That's my take on Dungeons and Dragons in general. Is like, want to play D&D? Is like, can we play literally anything else? No? Okay, yeah, sure, I'll play D&D. That's fine. Harsha says that's true. The market can be extremely saturated, and if you don't already have an audience, it could be tough to gather interest. Yeah, you have like no matter what, you just have to do so much work, right? It's like if you are doing something by yourself, like the promotion of it, just the promotion of it is a full-time job, right? It's like when my book first came out, um, I did some work to get it out there, and luckily I was able to talk to Steven about it and get a little bit of promotion. I was able to talk to Scott Johnson about it and get a little bit of promotion, and it did okay, right? It was like up on the list, like competing with like whatever J.K. Rowling had just come out with for like a day, or like a few days, and then obviously that inertia only takes you so far. Um, but yeah, it did pretty okay. But I don't do it anymore. My book is just kind of sitting there, not being promoted except by like the robo promotion of having like a Facebook page. So yeah, it's like if I had the resources to promote it, I could probably be making more money off of it. Let's see. Quote 11 is Beat comes in with a steel chair. Yeah, that's pretty good. That was Skippy. The I think the one you're looking for is actually 13. Is it quote 13? Is that the D&D one? Yeah. Quote 13. The main problem with D&D is that it's very stupid. Yeah. Possibly the most quoted quote in this channel. Um, Ours says, hee hee, I can see it on my bookshelf from where I sit now. The Tale of Tallest Rabbit, what an awesome read. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. All of you guys that bought the book and have read it on like physical edition or on Kindle, I really appreciate it. I extremely appreciate those of you that have kids or like nephews or whatever, or nieces or grandkids or whatever, and have read it to them. I super duper appreciate that. That's just so amazing to have that happen, right? So I'm glad that I was able to like get that book out of me and put it out there, and that people are able to read it. It's really, really, it's kind of an honor to have like any amount of audience for it, and the reception has been very warm and pleasing. Horseman Man says, Tallest Rabbit, infinitely better than anything J.K. Rowling has ever written. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Harvester says, I imagine the resources to get an audiobook version recorded could be a lot and maybe prohibited for the time being, but I think that would be a very cool addition. Yeah, that's something that I've always kept an eye out for. Nowadays, there's like companies that are like, hey, hey kid, you got a book? You wrote a book? You want to make it an audiobook? We'll do that for you. We'll make your book into an audiobook. Have you thought about that? And that seems alluring, but also I don't know if I trust them. They seem like a little fly by nighty. So when something emerges that's like a good like consumer thing where it's like you pay us money and we got like a legit voice actor to voice your book, then maybe. Although you know Stephen and Brad Will, they like did an audiobook of is it Dunwich Horror. So I don't know. Maybe I'll talk to Stephen about it, and maybe he can line something up. But don't hold your breath. Um, Horseman Man says, what I love about quote 13 is that if I remember the context, it was a pretty generous statement writ large. Yeah, yeah, it was like the beginning of like a wider conversation about stuff going on with D&D, and it was like before the OGL stuff. Um, you know, it was like a conversation in general about sort of like how some things are very specific and some things are very general, and they all kind of live together. So yeah, definitely that's part of the problem. Uh, Tallest Rabbit, infinitely better than anything J.K. Rowling. Thank you. Um, I'll don't worry about it. Harv, I'll go in and fix because you put a P for horse pawn mine, but I'll fix it. I can fix that in the actual what is it called Streamlabs thing. So don't worry about it. It's fine. It's fine. Horse on mine at this point, I'd be worried they're pushing AI. Yeah, and they're gonna do it eventually. They really tried. Like all this stuff that they're like, no, we were never planning on doing it. They were super planning on doing that. They want to turn D&D into a like pay to play kind of a thing where like you have a module and you get to play with your friends, and then when the module like basically a video game, right? When the module is over, the game is over, and then when the next one comes out, you got to pay to play that one. So it's funny because they could just make it a video game, right? They could just be like, hey, you want to play a real time strategy game based on D&D? But here's the thing, right? We talked about Fire Emblem earlier in the stream. You know what game is like a grid based tactical game? Dungeons and Dragons. And you know what game has never been a grid based tactical game? Any video game licensed to Dungeons and Dragons. Neverwinter Nights was like the closest one. Like if you want a D&D experience, Neverwinter Nights was probably the closest. Everything else just plays completely different and just goes to show how like afraid of their own mechanics D&D has always been. Like no D&D games simulate playing D&D, right? Like if you want to play a game that's like D&D, then play Fire Emblem, play like Into the Breach, play games where like you move characters and their little tactical abilities actually do stuff, right? Like D&D is just, and it's funny because it's like D&D is ashamed of that stuff. Um, but like other games just do that. That's just what they do and nobody's mad at them for it. It's it's unbelievable, honestly, a lot of the time. Hers says, "Oh yeah, quote 13 is a strong thesis statement on a very nuanced discussion." Yeah, I agree. Hardy says, "You have my thanks, Rodrigo. Thank you." Roman says, "AI is the future." Rosamund says, "Oh, I meant AI for your sketch audiobook companies." Oh yeah, that is probably what they're doing too. Haritsu says, "Oh, I would like to share on the topic of writing. My creative writing course wants a 20-piece portfolio of short prose pieces following prompts out of our course material. Today I wrote an all dialogue scene of Mr. Darcy phoning a plumber service when his basement is flooding, and I had a great deal of fun." Oh, that's cool. Is Mr. Darcy a character I should know? Is that the guy from Mary Poppins? Um, Harrison says, right, good how rad it would have been. God, how rad it would have been to have a 40 video game, right? That was like the perfect moment. But it didn't happen. Temple of Elemental Evil was pretty close too. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's been some that've been close, and some that probably are that. Like Baldur's Gate has like that first person. The original Baldur's Gate has like that first person thing, and you move through a dungeon. So yeah, that's pretty close. Um, ba 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 ba. Hard says Solasta does do it though. They are licensed and use SRD and their own stuff. Okay. Malone says it wasn't on grid. Literally used. It wasn't on grid. Literally used almost every mechanic of 3.5. Yeah, that was Neverwinter Nights too. It had like most of that stuff. Mr. Darcy is the lead guy from Pride and Prejudice. And I'll use a Mary Poppins. It's like it's either that or Bridget Jones. I don't clearly I'm just not very well versed with like British literature. Horse One Mind says no. Mary Poppins has Mr. Banks, maybe the most one on the nose character name ever. That's true. He does work at a bank. Um, very much on top of that. Banks children. Okay, that makes sense. Let me get some water. So yeah, I know. This time I was doing it on purpose. Most of the time I don't, but I appreciate you saying it. So continue to say it, please, so that I don't get screwed up. But yeah. Um, what else is going on? So Pavlov had been sick for a few weeks, and he's doing a lot better now. But part of the reason why we didn't have a stream last time is because I had to like do a bunch of stuff like the Tuesday before to get Pavlov to the doctor and have him take medicine, and we didn't know how he was going to be doing. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to cancel the stream in case something happens. And he's fine now. He's actually sleeping right over there. Um, like I said, I mentioned this before that he used to just like wake up and like look at me because I'm like talking and I'm talking loudly, right? This is like my broadcasting voice. So he used to like be like, "What are you doing?" But now he's used to it. He just can sleep through a podcast or a stream now. It's not a big deal. So he's doing a lot better. Um, the only problem is that he's still kind of in observation, so he's not allowed to have anything to eat except for his like special food that he eats, and that includes treats. So he hasn't gotten a treat in like a couple weeks now, and he is like just like he's like, what is the world? Like, what is happening? Because we used to give him lots of treats. So yeah, he is just like, he'll do stuff that normally would get him a treat, and then just stand there, and we're like, okay, well, sorry, you can't get any treats. And you're like, he doesn't understand why. I wish I could explain it to him, but he doesn't understand it. But he will. He's doing fine now, so I'm guessing next week when we take him in, he'll probably get cleared. So that's what I'm hoping for. Um, let's see. It was a ruse all along. Yeah, yeah. Pavlov's doing better, and yes, if you subscribe, right? Is that what it's called? To the channel, you do get a Pavlov um, emote. You also, I think, at a higher level, you get like a laser Pavlov emote. Yeah, I guess you get a couple, right? Yeah, and like at higher levels, there's like, or is it like glowing eyes Pavlov emote available for everybody, or is it like at a higher level? Do we have a Pavlov command? We don't, but I should build one, so I'll do that at some point. Yeah, yeah, all of my because I don't always get, um, you know, like there's my channel is only patronized by a handful of people, so um, most of my emotes are just or the commands that I have for emotes are like generic emotes because, well, hang on, just calm down. Check, 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 1 2. Okay. Most of the emotes that I have, or most of the commands that I have, are generic emotes so that anybody can use them. But yeah, I should do some like Pavlov hype ones. Glowing eyes is not available for tier 1. Okay, yeah, so that's a tier 2 one. Definitely no warrior shade on channel development. Stuff is built as is necessary, and that's cool. Yeah, it just hasn't been a thing that people have asked for, but now somebody asked for it, so I'll look into it. Um, it'll be cute. Let's see what else. Um, I think that's probably about it for today. You might notice that I'm not wearing like the big headset. Um, I think that a lot of the time after doing a stream and after doing Critical Hit, because I kind of do them back to back, I would feel pretty bad after doing all of that, and I think that actually having the headsets on for like that long of a period of time was part of it. And part of the reason why I did it is, one, I didn't necessarily trust my webcam mic, but I think it's good enough for what we're doing here. Um, and because obviously my headset mic is really good. Um, but yeah, I was just like, I don't want to. I don't. I don't want to wear it. I don't want to wear this headset for like, you know 5 or 6 hours with like maybe a 1 hour break in between. So I think this works fine. Again, the audio is probably better with the headset, but I think this works okay. We'll see. We'll see the VOD later and see if that needs to happen. But I think for my own health, it's probably better not to wear the headphones for too long because I don't know if it squeezes my head or what. But yeah, um, I think it just helps, right? It just helps to not have to do that, along with like all the other triggers there are. Um, how does it says Pavlov demands your cooperation to dismantle Big Chicken. Yeah. We've had a lot of Pavlov. Pavlov has definitely said a lot of funny things during his recovery because we're always trying to figure out what he's trying to say. So he's like, how come you not giving your treats, Big Chicken? So it's a conspiracy, okay? It's a conspiracy, Big Chicken. No one to give me no treats. So he's definitely been, and he's extra cute because he's begging a lot more, and like we are absolutely not allowed to give him human food. But he's begging like it's his job. Um, how does this? Ah, yeah. Does that constricting make it worse on your migraines or make them trigger more easily? I think it does. I think it just like so. I've kind of discovered that um, going into migraines, I kind of discovered that one of the symptoms of my migraines, is something called allodynia. And I don't know if it's like officially allodynia, but it makes my skin, like my body, just like extremely sensitive to pressure. So I discovered this because having to wear masks at work, I would get a migraine and I would take something for the migraine and the migraine wouldn't go away. Um, but then if I went out, um, like outside where I could take my mask off, like I would be feeling really bad and I would take the mask off and like it would just go away. Like suddenly, like I didn't feel terrible anymore. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the mask. Like, and it's not that like the mask like not letting me breathe or whatever. It's literally just like the pressure of having the elastic on. Just that tiny amount of pressure was making me feel really bad. And I think it's the same with the headsets. Like, there's nothing wrong with them. Right now, I feel okay. But I think if I start, like, if a migraine starts or starts kind of getting going, the headsets just make it so much worse, right? So I don't know if they're a trigger, but they're definitely something that just feels terrible. And, migraines basically, there's like what one might think of like the migraine proper, which is a period of time when I'm like in pain, but there's like a pre-drone and a post-drone, pre-drome and a post-drome with an M, I think. Um, and during those periods, I'm very light sensitive, I'm nauseous, there's all this other stuff going on, and yeah, like having pressure, especially on my face or head, like it doesn't help. So this is something I'm trying. I'm just constantly trying new things to see if like they help, right? So this is something I'm trying right now. Um, uh, Harvester says motion to amend to Pavlov demands you cooperate to dismantle Big Chicken. Okay, yeah. Pavlov pretty much always ends his sentences with okay, which is something that sometimes my wife and I just start doing, and we have to like also like kind of work it out of our vocabulary because yeah, you don't want to like be at work and be like, well, you gave me too much work to do today, okay? Like, there's a reason why it sounds like a funny, cute little guy. It's like it's a weird thing to say. It's a weird way of doing things. I have heard of the reverse pressure, like pre-rainstorm causing a migraine. Yeah, some people are very susceptible to the weather. I don't seem to be. Um, which is good because here in Washington, like you get some amount of rain every day from spring or like yeah, basically from fall through spring, right? Like the summer is the only month that's like very dry and have you get multiple days without rain. Um, every other month it's like or every other season is like at least a little bit of rain. So living in Washington State and having migraines that were triggered by the weather would probably be pretty tough. Hars says relationship bits are hella fun, but they're also very insidious that way. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, or like you'll just start cracking up because somebody says something that reminds you of something, and you have to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's an inside joke with my wife. We're hilarious. You don't know this, but we're hilarious." All right. So anyway, yeah, let's wrap it up here. I want to thank you guys for hanging out and for letting me test out my audio setups on you and for talking to me about Fire Emblem. Um, And yeah, you guys, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you to those of you that have subscribed with Prime subs or otherwise. It helps me out. Every once in a while, Twitch sends me a check, and it definitely helps, right? It like just you guys like just directly contribute to like groceries and rent. So I really appreciate that. So yeah, thanks guys, and I will see you soon. Keep your ears out for Critical Hit. We're going into a new game, and I think you guys are gonna really enjoy it. We've had a lot of lapsed listeners, I think, from the Void Saga, and people need to get back into Drifters, and they need to get back into PAN as it comes out. Because yeah, it's a very different game from what we normally play, so it'll be interesting. So yeah, I'll catch you guys later, and thanks so much. Oh, now the music's working. Now we finally got the music working. Oh, okay, great, fantastic.